A very warm welcome to one and all present here with us. My name Yalimadad and good evening. Daudani, and I'm a learned man. The capacity. Sorry.
Hello, mic check, 1, 2.
A very warm welcome to one and all present here and those who are watching us live. Yalimadad and good evening. My name is Sonal Daudani and I'm your host for the evening. A learned man once quoted, "The ability to learn is a gift. The capacity to learn is a skill. And the willingness to learn is a choice." And we at IPN Mumbai acknowledge each one of your choices and are here today with another engaging topic that holds our future. Imagine a world where we live, shop, interact, work from the comfort of our couch. How is it even possible? How does it work? What is in it for me from Metaworld? I'm sure all of you have these questions and many more. And thus, we are here today. Without much ado, I would like to now call upon our speaker for the evening, Mr. Neeraj Roy, who will help us know the topic better. Mr. Neeraj Roy is the founder and CEO of Hungama Digital Media, which is India's leading digital media entertainment company. He has been at the forefront of internet revolution in India and has played a pivotal role in shaping the country's digital entertainment landscape. Neeraj was amongst the top 10 movie thinkers and top 50 most influential people in movie world globally. He has also been awarded the Economic Times Young Leader Award. I would now like to invite Neeraj to ignite our minds. So guys, please go ahead and fasten your seat belts as he takes us to the meta world. Neeraj Roy.
Thank you very much, and a very good evening to all of you here in front of me in Mumbai, and a very warm welcome, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are joining from wherever you are. It's indeed a tremendous privilege to be here amongst you. When my brother Suleiman mentioned about this few weeks ago, it was not a request, it was, while said with a lot of sort of ask and humility, it was very much an instruction, but I must tell you that I am delighted to be here. So not only did he want to just make sure that I am here amongst you, but he actually drove me here to be here with you. So thank you, Suleiman, for that, and wonderful to be here. The other gentleman who has been tremendously diligent in this entire process, and I must confess, I speak at probably about 15, 18 forums a year, every year across the world, but rarely do I get this level of diligence and planning as happened with Adil. So Adil is the person who insisted that this entire topic be all the things that we're going to talk about: digital media, blockchain, Web3, Metaverse. He insisted that we have electric vehicles to be discussed and robotics, etc. So the idea is I will try and make this as interesting for you all. I will try and relate this to, I think how I was introduced itself, the fact that this is a learning exercise. And I think to me, curiosity is something which has kept me going in a certain way. And I think that's really what over the next little this. So without much ado, let me come to this. And once again, thank you to the Ismaili Professionals Network Foundation and to the initiative which is under the Zionist Aga Khan Economic Planning Board of India. There's a word and there's a term which we have all gotten very accustomed to in the last few decades, and that is disruption. And we use it now pretty much in a very, very normal sense. We would talk about it, so this is going to get disrupted, or this industry will get disrupted, this style of teaching will get disrupted. The term disruption has become a part of humanity in a very, very significant way. Yeah, I think that's better. Thanks, sir. And in the next few slides, what I'm trying to do is, since your entire network is a network of professionals, you all are in various walks of life. To me, there are these 4 or 5 big sort of trends or components which are really impacting the way. So if 20 years back, just the internet was one of them. Now you hear about cloud computing, you hear about big data, you hear about nanotechnology or renewable energy, 3D printing. Each of these is having a very significant impact in the way we will lead our lives, and more important than us, our children and our grandchildren will. So I think with that little backdrop, and as the hostess who introduced, the fact that you are here to empower yourself with learning and insights, that's going to be my little humble next 45 seconds of sorts in taking you. About 5-6 years back, I had the opportunity of meeting a person called Thomas Frey. Now, if you Google him, Thomas Frey is supposedly one of the top futurists in the world. As per Google, he's like amongst the top 2-3 futurists. So I was listening in a forum just like this in the audience, and this was in 2016 or 17. And he said that by 2030, 2 billion jobs on this planet will get disrupted. I heard his presentation, I went about this. After the session, I went and spoke to him. So I asked him, first thing I asked him was, what were your predictions 10 years back? Because when it's a futurist, it's always good to know, what the person's track record has been. Lo and behold, 8 out of 10 things he predicted 10 years back were already a reality. So I said, are you suggesting that 2 billion jobs will no longer exist? That's not good for humanity. He said, no, that's not what I'm saying. And he went about trying to explain it in a certain way. He said, how old are you? That time, I was like 47 or something, 48. And I said, this is how. He said, okay. Would it be right to say that when your father, he took up a job? I said, no, he had his own little business. He says, did he stick to that? I said, yes, that's all he did for his entire life. He says, okay. He said, see, I believe that a generation behind us probably was used to 2-3 jobs. The generation that you are in may be used to 3, 4, 5 jobs. But the generations ahead of us may have to take up 8, 9 jobs till they sort of cover their entire professional journey, as it were. And that kind of resonated with me. So what he was basically trying to say was 2 billion jobs will get disrupted, but that does not mean that they will lose their jobs. The people concerned will need to reskill themselves. And that to me is really, in an essence, the next few segments. The intention is to talk to you with that context, that how do we reskill ourselves. So we will talk a little bit about what the digital landscape is. I'm a person of numbers. I always feel comfortable when I get a sense, okay, what is the size of the opportunity? Where are we heading? So I'll try and give you some numbers, particularly about our economy. What are some of the trends that we are witnessing? And then we're happy to have interactions with you. So what will we cover? The sectors, as I mentioned, and this is Adil's brief. So if it gets a little monotonous, please blame him, because in this much time, there's only so much that can be covered. But we'll talk about digital media. We'll talk about something which is very much in the news now, like blockchain and Web3 and Metaverse. And I'll try to demystify this as much as I can. The idea is not to intimidate you. The idea is to just pique your curiosity so you like to know more. We will talk about a little bit about the environment, because the environment has its repercussions to how humanity will probably in 100 years make a change to electric vehicles, what it can lead to in terms of self-driving cars. A very big component of all of this is this whole thing about artificial intelligence and machine learning and big data, or as commonly used, AI and ML. And we'll try and then if time permits, we'll go a little more geeky and we will get into the world of drones and robotics as well. Okay. So this chart is more, not to confuse you, this is all our worlds, because of digital technology, are sort of getting interlinked. So think of this, keep this at the back of your mind, think of it like a little neural network, because not many people would have thought that what has battery technology got to do with digital? But battery technology in a self-driving car is all about data and intelligence, and that has its own implications. What is 3D printing? Because that's the world of manufacturing. How is that linked to data? So this chart, in a way, kind of just makes us, at one level, feel a little overwhelmed that our world is getting complex, but in reality, it's really like a little neural network where, things you are getting used to sensors. The moment you, already small things, you walk into in our family, by the way, the biggest geek is actually Suleiman. I have learned more from him over the years so he's the first one to implement, remote access in his home of lighting. He introduced Alexa as conversational thing in his home, to the extent that his domestic help now uses that to have little conversations. So the domestic help goes around saying, Alexa, dhobi kab aayega? And it's learning in its own way of doing this. So let's touch, next few slides, let's give you a little sense on what are the numbers as far as India is concerned. And we are really very blessed. I think we are tremendously blessed as a nation that in 75 years, we are at the cusp of the next few decades. If we do certain things right, we will be dominating world economy in a certain way. And why? Digital has a very strong component to play that as a role. So the Indian market now, almost about 750 million active internet users, expected to grow to almost 950. We are still one of those rare markets in the world where we are adding 5-6 million new consumers who are getting access to the internet each month. So it's very rare. Nowhere in the world is this kind of growth still happening. One of the biggest triggers of this digital economy, the foundation got laid about 6 years back. 6 years back, once 4G was introduced, we were a market in September of 2016 where for 1 gig of data, the average Indian used to pay 250 rupees to get 1 gig of data. And you can remember, we were very conscious of the data, because if you cross that 1 gig, then, I have known some people who got even 10,000 and 20,000 rupee bills, and etc. And God forbid, if you clicked on something on the internet while you were traveling abroad, the telecom companies will come down. We went in September of 2016 from an average usage of about 350, 400 million people were using just 900 MB of data per user. And we went from there in 2 years to 13 gigs of data. Today, as we speak, the 750 million consumers are using on an average 21 gigs of data per month. And we went as a market from about 250 rupees for a gig to for 150 rupees, now you get 30 gigs of data. What does that do? It basically, it brought our guards down. We were always alert, it's like, because this is the core fuel. But this fuel became almost like air, it was okay, it was like water, you just got it. With this, the liberation of the average consumer to go out and discover. And they would do it by way of playing the video in WhatsApp or going to YouTube and learning and observe. And this is one of the biggest phenomena, and this is a world case study where nowhere in the world, India is today the largest consumer of data, even ahead of China, as far as a basic telecom network is concerned, not the Wi-Fi, etc. It is the telecom ecosystem. And even in the last 2.5 years, when we had the pandemic, in some ways, when you look at it, the telecom network played the role of equivalent of a frontline essential worker. Because if we didn't have this kind of data network capability, we would not even be able to consider things like work from home, e-commerce, and ordering and doing things. So keep this in mind. This is a very, very big catalyst. So with this in mind, obviously, what do? We are also we're a nation of 29 states with 17 spoken languages. So we obviously are very opinionated. So we like to talk, we like to put things on social media, whatever. And that's one of the reasons why the world's social media is looking at us. We'll be almost 1 billion consumers on social media in the next few years. We spend 2.5 hours a day on social media. Now that's a lot. Hopefully some of this will change to a little more productive kind of things as well, because some parts of social media have become very toxic as well. Suleiman and I were just discussing on the way here. We'll see what changes will happen to Twitter after Elon Musk's entire thing. But what he's talking about is something sensible. He's saying, I don't want to address to the extreme ends. I don't want to address the 10% right and the 10% left wing. I want to create Twitter like a town hall kind of an experience. And if he's able to do that, hopefully it will be positive and good things. The second big thing as far as India is concerned, which has been a big catalyst for whatever is happening, is the implementation of the Aadhaar program. Again, one of the largest in the world ever done. This has led to a proliferation of transactions which are digital transactions. I'm reminded of the way this entire piece has grown. Now close to about 24 billion annual. In fact, it's now closer to, because last month itself there were about 4.8 billion transactions which happened through the UPI ecosystem. At that run rate, that means 50 billion per year. I'm reminded of a very interesting story, and this happened around the 3rd, 4th month, around June of 2020, so still very much in the pandemic phase. How many of us know, like let's say, so this is a senior of ours, maybe a parent, an uncle, aunt. We're very used to writing checks, and as a discipline, we will write it maybe, on a particular day, and you want to make payments. So a friend of mine, we used to talk a lot, those days we used to do a lot of these Zoom calls and all that. So I'm talking to this friend of mine, and I said, what's happening? He says, nahi, my father is a little anxious. Why? He said, it's been 4 weeks, he's not been able to make his payments, which he does. So I said, but wo to abhi tum online kara do unko, na? He said, nahi, Neeraj, I've tried, but it's, okay, then anyway. After 2 weeks more happened, somehow very reluctantly, this friend's father he accepted. He went out through the whole process. So after about 4 weeks or so, I must have spoken to him 1 month later. So I said, how is it and how's uncle now? So he says, yaar, he has become like a gun-slinging cowboy. I said, why? He said, I was at the dinner table and I asked my wife, I said, Manisha, have you paid that bill? वो आया था उसका. So my father jumps up, he says, मैं payment करूं? Because he got used to it, and it was so simple. And I think, that is the point I'm trying to make, is that these are some of the core, think of it as the pipeline which is being laid out for a new India. Appealing to, from a 2-year-old to an 80-year-old, making it easy to get into this entire space. So, another big one is e-commerce. We saw in the last 2 years massive acceleration of e-commerce. I mean, all of us have stories of somebody who was ordering even the smallest of things in trying to do that. Thankfully, and I say this from an Indian point of view, all that exuberance, because sometime around this time last year, the word was like e-commerce will only dominate, retail will be done, whatever. I was a little hesitant of that as far as India is concerned, because adoption of this without necessarily setting up the core foundation, because the retail ecosystem in India is a big job giver as well. It's self-employed, it has a thing. Thankfully, we have seen, the entire return as well. But people have realized what the benefits of commerce are. And equally, this has also given an accelerated time for retailers in the physical world to embrace practices which will help them to grow their business. And this is a big aspect as well. Digital entertainment, the world that we come from, now over 500 million people who use video. This will go to almost 750 million who are using active sort of video. And we believe almost 500 million people in the next 3-4 years will have a subscription. Even if a consumer said 100 rupees a month is what they want to spend for 3-4 services. They may go in and out. Just now cricket is happening, so somebody wants a cricket pack, somebody wants this. But if 100 rupees a month, which is 1200 rupees a year, which is still roughly half what you pay as the base price for DTH, in which you technically get about 100 odd channels, but you use only 15 of them, and that is, a linear channel. At that kind of a rate itself, this has the potential of becoming a 90,000 crore ecosystem and market, and we'll see where it goes. Another big area which has reference and something that we as a company are very actively involved in is also gaming. Gaming is, I would suggest, when you look around, if you've got youngsters at home, and my sister, her son is just gone into engineering now. About 7 years back, he was an avid gamer and would just be playing games, and and naturally my sister was very concerned because this is very addictive as well. I'm happy to inform you that the world of gaming is being seen as like the new form of the software industry, and I'll tell you a little story here. It's about 4.5 years back, few of us, there were 3-4 of us, we were engaged with the government to try and make them look at this overall sector in the same way that they looked at the IT services or the software sector. If you remember 35-40 years back, the Indian IT services sector got 3 benefits from the government. The first was they gave them a 10-year tax break for software exports, which was extended by 5 and another 5. The second was they got complete tax-free status for hardware in terms of developing software. And that led to the formation of the software export processing zone. And the Indian software industry is a pride of India. It is a dominant force in the global ecosystem. The worldwide gaming business currently is a $250 billion industry. If I do a comparison of this to the worldwide film industry, it is currently 2.5 times the size of the film industry. Meaning the worldwide film industry, all what you see on Hollywood and this and various, is a $100 billion business. This is a $250 billion industry. When you go deeper into this, there is areas like animation, VFX. So I'm very happy to inform you in April this year, the government actually took to our request and they formally set up a task force of 7 of us who were asked to work with 6 different ministries in the government. And we were asked to formulate and put together a policy document which is called an AVGC XR. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but the acronym stands for Animation, VFX, Gaming, Comics, and XR, which is Augmented Reality, Virtual Reality, Mixed Reality, which is called as Extended Reality. And the government is so forward thinking because they've looked at this in a way whereby they're saying by 2032, they want to have a $90 billion ecosystem across these sectors with 2 million new jobs to be created. So our task was not just to formulate, the task was to actually go into, think of a small thing I'll tell you. How many of you here have seen Marvel movies? You know, we've all seen, okay. Do you stay back till the end and you watch the credits? Have you noticed something when you watch the credits that are coming? There are at least about 2,500 to 3,000 names that are mentioned. Next time you see it on TV or you go and watch it, I'll bet you about 1,000 of those names are Indian names. These are people who are working here in India, in the rest of the world, etc. And they've taken to animation and VFX as a career. Now, the way we explained it to the government was, we said, see, when we were small, we were 7, 8, we all were, you know, you had to do object drawing in class and whatever, you know, now, what use did we have with that? We drew a banana, we drew an apple, we drew something, and, you know, we did a perspective drawing. The next 20, 30, 40 years, if our lives will be so driven by digital, the important thing to understand is those are the worlds that those are the narratives and stories that we'll start experiencing. So today when you play a game, and some of the gamers, those worlds that are created, and that's the first sense of what is a metaverse. The first inkling of what a metaverse is the worlds that are being created there. Normally now we see a lot of these movies, like in gaming, if a film is 2.5 hours and if I want to make a game on it, I have to do 50 hours. The thumb rule is for a 2 to 2.5 hour, it's 20 to 25 times is the time, because I can do anything, I can move in any direction, and there has to be gameplay associated. So we explained that those worlds that are getting created, why do those worlds have to have dragons in them and whatever? Why can't they have, you know, our lives, our this, and that's the manner. So very happy to note that the government actually took to it. There are 1,650 schools which have been incorporated into this program, including universities. There are we will have proper certifications and, you know, degrees programs, and most importantly for parents to take pride as well. I remember 20 years back when an average middle class Indian parent was asked कि वो आपका बच्चा क्या करता है, they would turn around and say नहीं वो कुछ कंप्यूटर में कुछ करता है. You know, some of those computer में कुछ करता went on to become, you know, set up startups and get into this entire thing. That's the entire phase of where this will lead to. So I'll pause now. So this is a little backdrop of what our world of digital India is, and it's a very optimistic, very positive world as such. Now let's come to the next topic at hand, which is blockchain and Web3 and Metaverse, etc. So first, let's just try and simplify what is blockchain, you know. In a very simple way, it's a new form of technology which, as it says, it's open, it's a distributed ledger that can record transactions between various parties efficiently and is verifiable. Now, let me simplify it a little more. Typically, when let's take an instance. you buy a house. Now you have to go and register your house, and you have to actually go to the registrar so that you know that we bought, these are the two people who did it, and this property belongs to you. That record is there in the system. Now that thinking is what has brought humanity till here. But the reality is, even in that, there is, scope for wrongdoing. There are enough instances when cases are created, forged documents happen, etc. Blockchain is a mechanism whereby you have an open distributed ledger system. That means there are multiple places where this record is there, and it is irrefutable. You cannot make a change in it. So it's in a way like, and I have a small video which will probably explain that in a simpler way. So let me just play that out. Hopefully this will work.
Many people think of blockchain as the technology that powers Bitcoin. While this was its original purpose, blockchain is capable of so much more. Despite the sound of the word, there's not just one blockchain.
Sorry, can I try this?
Yeah, that's on. Hello, mic check.
It's on? Okay, so let's try.
Blockchain. Or even land titles. You might be thinking, we already have processes in place to track data. What's so special about blockchain? Let's break down the reasons why blockchain tech.
Chalo, we'll skip this for now. From this core component of blockchain, let me come to, from this, let me come to the metaverse, as it were. Before I go there, I must make a qualifier here, that the metaverse is today at a stage where, let's say, the internet was in the mid to late 90s. So it's very early days. It is, don't feel overawed by it. Don't sort of necessarily just jump into that, as it were, but like I said, have the curiosity to know more, because if you missed the internet in a certain way, the metaverse is one more very big opportunity that's coming our way. And my point is that if we are going to be in a world which will have a lot more of digital in our lives, then I think, it is a relevant component. So we'll talk to you a little bit about how we've come here, how we've gotten to the metaverse, what it is, who are some of the players in this, and what can you do in this. So for me to give you a little sense, I'll want to take you back maybe 20, 25 years. The first phase of the internet was called Web 1.0. This was largely what we call as a read-only web, meaning people were organizing things that were there. Think of Yahoo, think of this, etc. You could log in AOL and you will get some information. It was predominantly read-only. The second phase of the internet, which started around the mid-late 2000s, around 2008-9, is really driven by social media. And social media made the entire thing a lot more interactive, meaning not just were you consuming, you also had a point of view and you could post it and do that. And that led to things like user-generated content. There were early stages of commerce, etc., which started coming around. And in the last couple of years, we are talking about something called as Web 3. This earlier used to be termed as the spatial web. The spatial web meaning, think of it almost like a 3-4 dimensional world of ours. I'm physically here, but I could have an avatar of mine which is in the digital world, living his or her own persistent life. I know that's a little bit too much to handle at times, but we'll try and explain. This world is going to be largely built on the blocks of what I said, decentralization as one order. There will be new type of norms for trust, privacy. This world will have a lot more three-dimensional experiences, not just two linear experiences. So how do we define it? And there are numerous definitions that are there. It's basically an evolution of the internet. Don't just think of it as one more level, and 5G as a technology is going to be a big catalyst for it because it has much higher speed, so you can do things in the... It's basically going to, we go beyond browsing to actually inhabiting in the world. Right now, we are saying something, we are following somebody, we're commenting, we're doing... You could potentially be persistently living in those worlds. Now, sounds scary, but believe you me, that is the way and that's the path that's coming. And that's one of the reasons why it's the gaming world which has led to this. It is in the gaming world where this world truly begins here. So the metaverse can include things like virtual reality, which will of course require extra hardware. And some believe that augmented reality will be the first thing. You already see it if you have any of your phones. There are so many things that you can do with that, where there is an extra layer of augmentation that has been done. So this is the next few slides is something which I've tried to simplify it. That what are the elements in this? And I call them the 4 I's. It's basically about your identity. It will be about the incentive. It is the interaction that you will have, and it is about the intelligence. What is the first one? Identity. We will have our own avatars or our digital twins, etc. The journey on this, you don't realize it, but has actually already begun. How is it begun? Today, if you are sending somebody an emoji or an animoji, you have already started the process of expressing through a format which is, different form of a visual personification of you. The second phase of this is going to be driven by the types, the forms that we choose. Currently, a lot of these are in, it can be in a Lego-ish kind of a form of an avatar. It can be in a very Japanese style. It will start taking forms that you want. People may choose to have not 1, not 2, 10, 20 of them. They are living different kind of their expressions of their personality in different ways. The second I in this world is going to be about payments and wallets. So if you go to what I described as Web 2, in that world, the key was when you went to social media, many times when you went to another site, it asked you, do you want to register again, or do you want to give your Facebook or your Google access to enter? So the single sign-on process was essentially the process of social media. Whereas in this world, it will be you having a wallet which kind of does this. And that has the possibilities of potentially things like digital currencies, etc. coming around. And there will be some regulation centered around this. But a big part of it is that the data associated is going to be very differently used than what happened. The third I is really content, but I term it as interact because you will interact. So in the current form, we consume content in 3-4 ways. We can consume it as an audio. We can consume it as a text message. You get a message and you're reading it. You can consume it as a visual. You get a little image picture. You can consume it as video. You can consume it as a game. In this new world, a lot of this will come together. The worlds of gaming and video and audio and live and all kind of, and you will move from one to the other. You could be reading something and suddenly that same is currently, if you are reading something and you want to watch video, then you have to open a new video app. It will be YouTube or this or something. What if you, in whichever world you are able to go seamlessly from that. That's the kind of world which will happen. So it will be a lot more immersive. There will be phygital experiences, meaning physical and digital. You will go beyond following, you know. We all follow Suleiman and Salim for the lovely music that they do. You may turn around and say, you know, I want to participate in what is happening. They are always one of the sort of leaders when it comes to technology adoption. So they are now planning to put out one of their songs in which they are saying to their fans that you have an opportunity to participate in that. So you move from following to what is called as fractional ownership, meaning you want a piece of that, you want a small part of that entire thing and take that entire. So because of this, there will be new models that will happen. And the last is very, very important, is intelligence. We don't realize this. This has been one of the darkest things that have been there. We've all benefited from the internet in a very big way. But in the last 3 years, you've read about it, you've read about numerous kinds of hearings, congressional hearings, where governments are calling various platforms and saying, how do you store the data? What do you do with this data? Now, the realization has been that in the last 8-10 years, whilst we've all benefited, but the big tech companies have really become the core custodians of all this data. How many times have you noticed you are saying something, or you have received a mail, and that mail has got some reference to a holiday or whatever, and in the next 15 minutes you are getting an ad for Maldives or something like that? How many times, because frankly, this device is listening to everything, right? It's listening, it's got. So unless there's a regulatory framework. Now, Web3, the approach to Web3 is that they want to bring the power back to the consumer, to the citizens. It says, so if I go to Amazon, and Amazon knows my history, and because of my history, from their millions of products, they'll be able to serve me very quickly in 10 minutes. Okay, please use my data. But when I leave, that data should cease to exist. The next time I come back, I will still give you the permission by way of a simple way. Now, this is very revolutionary thought, and it's going to disturb the big tech companies in a very big way. These are the people who are going to get very, very upset about whatever is happening. And to some extent, you are seeing it. I mean, there is a massive erosion that has happened to their enterprise values, but the verdict is still not out there, but these are some of the key parameters to simplify it for you. So what are the opportunities? The opportunities, entertainment is always a catalyst for any new service to any kind of, it is always entertainment which drives things. There will be new models that will happen. We will go from consumption to ownership, and from a media economy to a data economy. And if all of this happens globally, it is estimated an $8-10 trillion business in the next 10 years or so. Yeah. Next is a video, but again, I'm just going to skip past this in the interest of time. So next, any questions at this stage? I hope it's okay. So next few topics are just simple 2, 3 slides, but it's more, as I mentioned, hopefully when you go back, it will demystify some of this for you, and you have a curiosity to go a little deeper into it. So we know that we have done to this planet in the last 100 years what we hadn't done for the last 100,000 years, right? That is the level of degradation that has happened to this planet. And today, a conversation, in fact, it's ironic we're talking about this because as we speak, there is what is called as COP27, the world's biggest climate summit, which is happening at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt right now. And the reality is that whatever were the predictions that we had made by 2050 to happen are likely to happen by 2040. If something had been said 2040, so all over the world, there is this massive requirement to go green. to become more sustainable and to be more conscious of the environment. Now, it's easier said than done because economies are built on this. One of the finest examples of an entire nation wanting to support green and going completely wrong is Sri Lanka. So, if you've been following Sri Lankan economy, Sri Lanka has gone through one of its worst economic crisis. But the origin of that crisis was, it's largely an agrarian economy just like ours. They chose to take on organic farming, and their government, Suleiman, a couple of years back, forced organic farming to across the board, all. Now, the yields that they got out of that organic farming was so poor, unfortunately, because the system has gotten used to that kind of fertilizers, etc., that it collapsed their economy in a stage. Same situation we witnessed even in the last 2 years, that as there is a growth, there's huge demand, but there is still space for fossil fuel as well. So we've got to balance these things, but in the realm of it, what has happened for sure is things like battery technology, electric vehicles has come centerpiece. It is now every nation in the world is it's mandatory. They are accelerating. In the US, they have said by 2035 there will not be a single vehicle which is the traditional vehicle that will get sold here. And this is the kind of reasons for it. For anything to become very viable, there has to be an economic sense to it. So what has happened is, in the last few years and what is perceived the next 5-7 years, the price of electric vehicles, if you know Tesla cars, when they started, they were very expensive. They've already started coming down, and it's estimated in the next few years a good quality electric vehicle will be available at even lower prices than traditional vehicles. Now that is going to be a huge boost to what will happen. So they are predicting that there could be as much as, out of a 90 to 100 million vehicle market in the world, currently just about 4 odd million is being done. This could grow almost 8-10 times in the next 5 to 7 years. So very big window of opportunity driven by sustainable batteries. Now that itself has numerous repercussions, because that's how some of the wars are now being planned or whatever. Why is China going so aggressive into Africa, for example? It's for the lithium ion mines and things like that. So those are the new territories of what will happen. With this is equally a very exciting subject, which is self-driving cars. Self-driving cars, the more you think about it, the potential of it is so high. So on an average, even when you buy a car, you use it for about 2 hours in 24 hours. Now, if the vehicle was self-driving, then you could be using it for 8, 10, 12, 15 hours, whatever. Which means the economic value of that changes very much. This is again coming back to Thomas Frey's jobs will be disrupted. But this means that, there are millions of people who are drivers. What happens to them? How do they embrace and adapt in this? But the thing about it is that, see, as normal people, we can't solve all these problems. The issue is, what's likely to happen? How do you prepare? How do you prepare your own business, your own line in preparation for that entire thing? And self-driving cars, I tell you, I'm reminded again of a small anecdote here. So about 5 years back, I had taken a delegation of 32 CEOs. I led them to Israel. And we met about 30 companies there. We did an India-Israel Tech Summit. And one of the companies that I had taken them to was a company, the names will come to me, but this is a company which was acquired by a company called Intel. Intel is the microprocessor. The name of the company was Mobileye. Now, Mobileye was a company founded by a professor in Israel, and Mobileye's technology powers 70% of all autonomous self-driving cars in the world. So Intel is all about a chipset. So they thought, you know, from the desktop to the car, I should get in. So they bought this company for $15 billion. So we were invited to the campus of Mobileye. And we were 30 odd CEOs and enthusiastic about questions and whatever. Now, the way their technology is being built is they are building 32 sensors around the car, and these sensors are sending, you know, I mean, gigabytes of data per second, because you have to imagine a world which is all your signals are synchronized, various other cars. So it is actually, while it's driving you, it is also connecting with various, it's analyzing the speed of other cars or whatever, and it is through that whole process it's going. So these 32 sensors. So that same day when we were there, our Union Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari made a statement that at that time that India is still not going to give permission for self-driving cars. We are still evaluating. This is 5 years back. So one of the slightly smart aleck CEOs raised his hand and he told the managing director of this Mobileye company, he said, see, you must be very disappointed, you know, India has prevented this thing, would have such a big market. So he said, yes, I know, we read about it. He says, in fact, we are talking to, you know, Mahindras and Tatas and all of those companies and all that, it's disappointing. But you know, at the same time, I must say, my engineers have heaved a sigh of relief. So he said, why? He says, see, because we are simulating these worlds. We are doing tens of millions of hours of self-driving to learn, to make the system learn, etc. But we have still not been able to figure out the mobility and the mood of the cows on the streets of India. So till such time that happens, we will get a few hours, few years more to figure it out. But I thought, you know, on a lighter vein, the fact is that this is happening. I have myself sat in a, you know, self-driving vehicle and it's surreal, I must say it. I mean, on the highways of London, you kind of, you just feel weird. Now, imagine what happens with this. If these vehicles are all self-driving, the repercussions are at so many different levels. Repercussions will be in the insurance ecosystem. Repercussions are in the people who are, you know, sort of, whether they are mechanics, whether they are drivers, including if you are spending more time in the vehicle. I have sat in a car where the entire screen from the inside becomes like a 65-inch TV. All your side panels are screens and whatever. And, you know, because it's self-driving, we all don't have to be looking in the same direction. So you press the seat, it turns around, you're in a seating which is, you know, like and the car is going, you're having your meeting over there, right? Because it's commute time. What happens to that? So the repercussions of each of these is so dramatic when you think about it, but it's happening for sure. On the last set of this, obviously through this, if regulation is a big part in this, and if this happens with drones, etc. as well, there's going to be a lot of very interesting things that will happen. So autonomous ride-hailing vehicles, they say if done to the totality, it will have as much as a $26 trillion material impact. And that is important because please understand that the world GDP is barely $90 trillion. That is the kind of economic value which will get parked out. I had a very interesting video here to show, but it's okay. Let me try it again. Just put some light.
nothing to be afraid of. Because we're working on safer cars for a safer tomorrow, with large-scale data-driven development at the BMW Autonomous Driving Campus.
I mean, I thought it was an interesting way of showing it was basically a test drive. So Google's done, Google has acquired a stake in a company called Waymo. They've done over 20 million hours of driving. There are 4 very large companies who are essentially analyzing the data associated with this. Yeah. Okay, next, quickly to try and get around to data. It's all really about data. It's about artificial intelligence and it's about machine learning and this. Just again, not to intimidate, to make it simple for you. It starts with artificial intelligence. It starts with writing a basic algorithm. And actually, we are all using it and we are all benefiting from it. So when you go to Swiggy or Zomato and you are opening the page, it has already tracked your last 3-4 times the way you have been consuming, and so it is sharing with you your preferences of, you know, you want Chinese, you want Spanish cuisine. If you're going to, if you're on a short video service or YouTube, it is using basics algorithm to show you more, which is like. So it starts with that. That then is converted into code which is called as machine learning. Meaning now that intelligence is making the machine itself prepare smarter and better and more closer to your requirement. And finally is what is called as deep learning, which is really the big impact of, you know, big data, which is, you know, a subject of sci-fi pictures, etc., where the system itself becomes smarter than you in terms of where it will be. But the importance of artificial intelligence, the importance of machine learning and big data is there in every aspect of life. And I have chosen to here just make a little reference that AI could automate the tasks of knowledge workers and boost productivity. Whether you are a software developer, you're an accountant, you are a bookkeeper, a lawyer, any field, the reality is just ask yourself as well, how is this information being used in the best form to take this forward? So again, I had a video, but I'm going to skip this past here. With this, let's talk about, you know, a couple more things which are like 3D printing and drones and robotics. First, let's talk about drones. This is a very interesting subject as well. If you see the drone ecosystem, we read about drones and drone warfare. But in reality, there are 20 industries which are changing because of drones. So if I just looked at agriculture as an example. Now, in a drone, visualize a scenario. Let's say there is there's a farm land of you know, growing oranges. Now, we know that in case there is the wrong use of pesticides somewhere, etc., it can lead to the drones in farming are being used for multiple things. One of them is as simple as, because they've got fish, they've got recognition software, they've got cameras in it. So they're able to, even at the speed they're going, they're able to gauge that it's in this batch, this batch, this batch, or whatever. That through GPS is automatically coded in. And many times you would have seen, even on 75th year of our, you will see some drones have formed, our flag have done this. It's very simple. Software is just coded and it's been told to sort of perform at this place versus this place and this place and this place and this place. That's exactly the manner in which even in agricultural farming or in the space of, you know, live events, of course, we use it extensively. Remote inspection, places where people can't go, deep mines, areas like that. So this is a very big use case that's happening from oil and mining to precision agriculture to public safety. And again, a big part of the drone ecosystem is driven by data in a very, very big way. I mean, there were two use cases here. I'll play it out just to.
This is a story from.
Yeah, just quickly. This is a use case. This is a use case of an ambulance drone. So, in this case, the patient who's needed, CPR. The drone comes exactly to the spot. There's a camera. The person is live, actually guiding and taking it. And this is in the field of health. I'm just, in the interest of time, skipping it. This is an interesting video which is linked to how drones are likely to be used for delivery purposes. This is done by Amazon. So.
This is a story from the not too distant future. It's the day of your daughter Millie's big football match. To be clear, that is the sort of football where you feet. Anyway, she is missing a vital piece of equipment, specifically a Stage 3 Puma Evo Power firm ground soccer machine, the left one. And some of it, sadly, is in the family's 3-year-old bulldog. So now what? Well, you could yell angrily at the poor thing, but what's the point? Because all it will hear is blah, 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 stewards, blah, blah, stewards, blah. Much better to behave like a rational human being. Find your tablet and place an order with Amazon for a pair of Puma Evo Power firm ground soccer shoes and have them delivered in 30 minutes or less. And in a location not too far away, a miracle of modern technology is dispatched. It's an Amazon drone, and after rising vertically like a helicopter to nearly 400 feet, this amazing hybrid design assumes a horizontal orientation and becomes a streamlined and fast airplane. In time, there'll be a whole family of Amazon drones, different designs for different environments. This one can fly for 15 miles. And it knows what's happening around it. It uses sense and avoid technology to, well, sense and then avoid obstacles on the ground and in the air. Back at the house, you're getting a message on your tablet to say that your Prime Air delivery is arriving. And it goes back to vertical mode and scans the landing area for potential hazards. This amazing innovation then lowers itself slowly to the ground, drops off the package, and flies straight back up to altitude. And moments later, you're walking through the door with a brand new pair of Puma Evo Power firm ground soccer shoes, size 3 for Millie, and a Nylabone chicken flavoured Neeraj shoe for naughty Stuart. And balance is restored to the universe.
So different kinds of use cases that are there. Again, robotics is again an evolution stemming from that that's happening, where robotics is at early stages, but so many industries, when you look at it, you look at the entire automobile sector. I mean, Tesla has almost 80% of their entire their plant machinery has been completely done into. Same way, you look at what's happening it's fascinating. You will be amazed at the kind of shoes. The shoes that I'm wearing are 3D printed actually. They're not, there's a reason why you get such variety of things, because of the ability to 3D. And they are now using material, which is, they could use copper, they could use steel, they can print in any of those forms. So again, something to be curious about and interested in, as it were. In the interest of time, I'm not going to. Just last 2 slides about us. So we're a company, we've been around for about 20 odd years. We're live in over 100 countries, for 115 million consumers who access us, some of our brands, our music, our video, and our gaming services. So my message to you is really 3 things. Don't feel shy to experiment, experience as much as you can, and hopefully through that you will evolve, whatever is best for you. So thank you very much. there are any questions, I'm happy to take. Otherwise, I know I'm far beyond my time.
Yes, there are. Are there any questions from the audience here first? Because we have a couple of them on the YouTube chat. We'll take the audience questions first, if you have any. Here, Adil.
Neeraj, I was thinking, so when we spoke about jobs being disrupted, I would think that a youth or somebody who's into, let's say, even less than 45 may manage to upskill themselves and, you know, manage it. But what about people who've crossed the age of learning,
No,
maybe above 50,
No, I
55?
think it's a very, very valid question. The first thing I'll say is, I will encourage all of you to just go and do one online course. Do whatever course, not about a job or anything. I'll share with you a couple of examples. So during the pandemic, again, we had a lot of time. So my own mother-in-law decided to do 3 online courses. She did an art appreciation course. She did a course on, you know, piano in its own form. Actually, basic education and skilling has become so simple that if you first just let go of your guards and don't feel intimidated. My thing is, it is from there that your interest levels will pan out. And you're right, generally, it is a habit thing, you know, when you're at a certain age, you don't want to make changes. But the beauty of a lot of this has become video-based instructions. And I'll just say, you know, watch few or some less what's happening to Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt versus, you know, some 30 minutes of some passion or interest that you've got will be of interest. So the answer is, what you're saying is generically correct, but I feel there is a way out because the courses have become simpler.
My other part to that question is, this can be done to people who have access to technology. I'm thinking
Yes.
about the rural India who still doesn't even know what is
So
internet.
there actually, you'll be amazed at, when you talk to companies like Google, etc., you find out that one of the biggest use cases of YouTube today is in the broader educational side. And if you recollect the first 2-3 slides that I shared, which is to talk about what was the piping required for this digital proliferation. The piping was data prices coming down, smartphones on the rise. Those 2 aspects, the average person, and now with things like voice technology, like what an Alexa is doing, now you can do it as a device, but technically Google has voice in its own. I shared this with my mother. We'd got a nice big TV which we put out into the living room, and with the intention that she comes out of the room as well and watches some of her shows as opposed to being over there. But she was not comfortable. She was very comfortable with her core, Tata Sky, this, etc. Then I came one day and I explained to her on the Fire Stick the voice controls. That changed. That made them have a little more of a lean-in moment that's there. So and you notice it, if you go in any of these subjects, you see the number of influencers who in different languages are putting up things. I mean, I joke about it often. I said, if your only motive in life was to sell hydrosulfuric acid, like supposing that was your passion in life, मुझे और कुछ नहीं करना, I want to sell hydrosulfuric acid. Technically, you can go to YouTube and say, how do I sell hydrosulfuric acid? And, you know, something will come up out there. So people are doing, you know, using it effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, a very important question that comes up here, Neeraj. What are the risk factors as in personal data stealing or privacy. You know, that's something which is very, you spoke about it.
Yes.
How can you protect our data? Is India
Yeah.
as a country doing something for regulation?
Very much so. So there are definitely risks, but because of the last 3 years of pressure that has been put onto some of these platforms, there are 3-4 big things that have happened. Now, technically, every platform, where is it that your core data resides with? It is with 4-5 key things. It's with Google, it's with, you know, it's with Facebook, it could be with Apple, etc. Banks, it is. Banks is still, you know, your core part, you expect that as it were, but your browsing history, your that data. So there are, every one of them now has a guideline that you can restrict that data. It's a little complicated to do, not so easy for everybody to be able to do it. Hopefully that is a process which will keep getting simpler. But my advice would be that an elder can ask a younger one to make those changes, etc. Or what companies like Apple do, for example. Apple have taken privacy in a very strong way. So they have put elements and features into the device itself which restrict the other entities to take it away. But that also means that they become, what happens if they become Darth Vader? So, but that's how you can address. And that is the reason why there is this big debate about Web3. Because the Web3 world is almost like a rebel kind of an approach that's happening, where there's a new generation who's saying, there's a concept called zero knowledge proof. I mean, I didn't put it in here because it's so technical. Zero knowledge proof in very simple way is, as it implies, it's like with zero knowledge, I will still be able to prove who I am. So that is like going to a bank and supposing I have to remit money to Suleiman. It's my money, I've remitted it. Now I have to comply with all norms of KYC, etc., which is required. I can do all of that and yet the bank will not know who I am, who's doing it. It's an entire transfer happening in this form. So those are conversations that are happening, and if the world of privacy does not address in favor of the consumer, then things will go as draconian, you know, as them wanting to pull back.
Right. Since a lot of our community is into teaching, school education, there's a question on how Metaverse will impact school education or teaching.
Yes. Okay. No, that's a very good question, and it's a very so it will, in my mind, it will impact it very positively. So think of how what video did to teaching, where you used the utility of video and the tools that are there in terms of whether you created instructional videos, etc. with it. Now in a metaverse world, because it's three-dimensional, you will be in a position to, so let's say there's a class on biology happening. Now typically we were suddenly, from those graphs and pictures and illustrations to video, it became a lot more. Try, I was speaking in Barcelona 3-4 years back at the Mobile World Congress, and at that time I went to the HTC booth and I tried out you know, one of the VR experiences of getting into the human body. Now the use case of that, and this is a true story, at that time there was a friend of mine, his son was 17, Sly, and he was using the HoloLens of Microsoft, and he had written an application whereby it was basically, think of it like a doctor in Philadelphia doing an operation, a open heart surgery on a patient in Raipur, using robotics and virtual reality. The only catch in that is, God forbid if you're on a BSNL network or something, you know. But those were, so the metaverse will make, the metaverse for education is, in my mind, one of the more positive things to look forward to right now. It could be very interesting because you can literally give a lab kind of experience to people, and they can play around, turn it, and do all kinds of things with it. Okay.
So on your thought about gaming, one question says, how can one enter into the world of metaverse as a gamer and start the metaverse journey?
So, see, the gaming world has 4 segments to it. You know, you start, all of us will play some game or something, so we're, you know, which is what you call as casual mobile gaming. Then on top of that is some amount of there is this whole thing about real money gaming, which is game of skill, chance, you're playing rummy or something, or poker. Then on top of that is we make, what is this, fantasy, you know, you make your own teams and do this, and then right on top of it is esports. It is in esports, which esports as a format has become an Olympic sport now. Now it is going to be, meaning various countries will be putting up, the esport gamer is today given the same reference as an athlete. He's an athlete, and there are globally esport federations that have happened. The top 10 esports teams in the world, if you did an analogy of what that team and the gamer is earning versus what a top NBA basketballer is earning, or you know, a cricketer is earning, or some, you know, they are at par, if not higher. So one of the top esports gaming teams has an annual income of around 90 million as a earning, because esports itself has become a spectator sport. What happens, there are a bunch of people playing, but the world, that's why the metaverse is so exciting. Our homes, our TVs are no longer 40-inch this, they're larger. So you are enjoying that entire experience. So you're watching. So in Suleiman's world, there was a very interesting, there's a game called Fortnite. And 3 years back, 2.5 years back, there was I think 3 years back, there was a singer called Travis Scott who performed inside of the game. Now, he performed inside of the game, and there were 19 million people who came and watched that performance live. Salim Suleiman performed in, we're very proud, they performed yesterday in Doha at the Qatar stadium to almost 45,000 people. But just imagine, you know, being able to do that. Those are aspects of the metaverse which are possible.
A very technical one. What is the difference between blockchain technology like Bitcoin and RBI digital money?
Okay. So, blockchain is the technology which powers a cryptocurrency, which is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, okay, and there are thousands of cryptocurrencies that exist. Each of them have their own unique sort of thing to it. Although this is a question you should be asking Sly, he's much more well versed than me. But blockchain technology is what, now what is digital? So let's say India itself will have the equivalent of a digital rupee as an example of sorts. So they too will use the blockchain technology, and they will define, you can define what the norms associated with it are, and then as they institute, then that becomes another way for payment that will get played out. Yeah, please, yeah, please.
So basic blockchain technology in its simplest form is you have a Chopra which you write accounts for every transaction that you do. This is a digital Chopra.
Correct.
And it is distributed, so it's not one copy, it's millions of copies distributed on multiple computers where your transaction is recorded for life. And this transaction now, which is why it's called a block, because every time a block gets filled, it goes into multiple computers and resides there. That is what blockchain basically is. Now, when you look at the uses of blockchain, it goes into multiple things. Blockchain can be used to store all our records.
Land records.
Your land records can become blockchain. Music revenues that come for us are actually, we are in the process of moving.
Recently, a police station in Delhi has incorporated. This is very interesting, very useful, where they are recording for rape victims. Their FIR is recorded on the blockchain because that becomes a cryptograph, so you cannot make a change in it. It is that secure. And many a times, I mean, a rape victim may feel uncomfortable being talking this, whatever. So use cases are limitless of the way you will build this out.
So blockchain is basically going to be the foundation of this new revolution that is coming because it is proof. It's absolute proof. You cannot take it away. And therefore, all the currencies that are coming out, like the e-rupee or the e-dollar or whatever will come, will have absolute, there's no black money in this. It's pure. It's 100% proof that you've made this transaction. It will always be recorded in the history. And that's what basic blockchain is all about.
So the basic question, what I belong to the finance world and I can understand a bit on this. So what I understand is DeFi, where they do not want any regulator to control, that's the basic logic. On the other hand, the regulators want to control. Nobody is disputing the technology per se. Everybody says the technology is required.
Yes.
Where do you see the reconciliation happening and where will it head?
I mean, we're involved with this process, including in India. There has been conversations that have happened between there's a broader parliamentary committee that's been set up to evaluate something like this. So for starters, it is very understandable for any government to not just because there's a technology that means you sort of go ahead and do this. There's something that's working for whatever it is worth, etc. I believe that there is a desire, and the way India is moving, India has called out for, in fact, our finance minister has also done an outreach, and I believe that they are calling out for a global norm and conversation around this. At this point in time, multiple countries are doing different things. Here in India, our approach first has been that anybody who is dealt with, say crypto-based currencies, etc., there needs to be a record associated. In terms of the implementation of it for DeFi specifically, naturally the Reserve Bank will have to give its requisite approval. The good news is that the government is already using blockchain for numerous others. So for example, our certificates for COVID happened on that. So my personal belief is that there will be a midway kind of an approach, and that is one of the reasons why the digital rupee is also a component, is a step in that direction that will be.
So while they are saying digital currency which is not Indian, which is basically, it's almost like gambling. When you're buying a digital cryptocurrency, it's on a blockchain, but it's not on the same blockchain that the Indian rupee is going to be, right? So the technology and use case of blockchain does not mean that it becomes crypto.
Yeah.
So there are multiple blockchains running on, let's say, a Polygon net or an Ethereum net. The most used is the Ethereum net, and there are lots more. And what India is trying to do is create its own blockchain, which will start its own ledger right from zero. That's where the ledger will become valid, and that will be based on the Ethereum platform or Polygon platform or whatever, but it will be its own, India's own ledger. That's the big thing.
Thank you. So one last question. I know we are on top of the hour. Our community has a lot of youth who still are on the traditional, choices of commerce, arts, science. At this juncture, would you advise of any good online courses which could, help them with any UI UX, any other courses which could help them lead to Metaverse?
So
I won't restrict it just to the metaverse as such. I would say in this broader, I'm happy to share that offline with you all, which you could potentially share. But I myself, I use a platform called Udemy quite actively. There's Coursera, there's a bunch of them. The beauty about it is you can actually search for almost any topic, and if there is something relevant, it will come up. And these are typically courses which cost like 700 rupees, 800 rupees, and they have, 30, 35 hours, and you can do it at your pace. You don't have to do it in time in a certain way. Okay?
Thank you so much. I would now like to call one voice to the vote of thanks.
Preparing a customized content for us, and finally coming on the Sunday evening, spending 1.5 hours, 2 hours with us. Thank you so much. The session was really very, very interesting and insightful at the same time. You ensured that the language is simple, it is easy to understand for all the people present here as well as watching us over YouTube who are not from a technical background. So thank you for that. I'll once again, on behalf of the Aga Khan Economic Planning Board for India as well as the Ismaili Professionals Network, would like to thank you. I would like to call upon our Andheri Jamaat Khana Mukhi Sahib to felicitate you with a small token of appreciation. I would also like to thank Andheri Jamaat Khana Mukhi Sahib as well as Kamade Sahib for their constant support, to all the volunteers of Andheri Jamaat Khana for ensuring end-to-end arrangement at this venue here, as well as the national communication team to make it possible for the Jamaat across India to watch this session live with us. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants present here, as well as watching us over YouTube. Thank you so much for trusting us and making this event successful. Thank you for that. This is not the last event. We are coming up at Aga Khan Economic Planning Board for India, local board for South Mumbai. We are coming up with another event on a book review on the best-selling book, The Alchemist. The speaker for the event is Mr. Isar Qureshi. The event is on 20th of November at 11 a.m. at the same venue, Andheri Jamaat Khana Multipurpose Hall. So please do register. The registration counter is right outside this. So thank you so much. Yeah, Yali Madad.